So you're thinking of buying a property, or you've already bought a property and you're wondering what to do next? Well, this is the right video for you. I put together about 15 items that you should be doing as soon as you take ownership of your new property. And let's get right into it. And point number one, you're gonna want to change all the locks in the property. I would also change the front door keypad and the garage code frequency as well. You never know who has keys for the property, and your safety comes first. And I actually had this happen to one of my transactions where I was on the selling side and we sold the property, and then a few days later, I think it was like 4 or 5 days later, the new owners came to the property and my previous seller was in the home and they forgot something and they just went into the property. They kept one of the keys and it was just a very awkward situation. She was kind of a crazy seller, but stuff like this can happen. So you're gonna wanna change the keys immediately, if it were me. Point number two, you're going to want to have a lockout plan. Now, I've locked myself out of the property a few times and it really sucks. And it can be expensive paying a couple $100s for a locksmith. So I'd probably have extra keys given to like your parents, your siblings or friends. Maybe have a key somewhere outside the property, kind of hidden away, just in case that you lock yourself out. Just can save you some time and some headache. Usually when you lock yourself out, it's like the worst timing as well. So this is just a simple one. I'd have like some kind of a lockout strategy. And number three, now this usually comes up in a home inspection, but I would still check your carbon monoxide and smoke detectors. And I'd even change the batteries just for peace of mind. Like, you never know. And it's so simple just to change the batteries and make sure they're working properly. Point number four, I would find out where the water shutoff valve is. Now, in a home inspection, these usually pop up and the inspector can find them and it's fairly obvious, but occasionally they can't find them. And if this is the case, I would make sure you know where it is, because Cal could get down to -40 and accidents can happen. And if your pipes burst and you don't know where the water shutoff valve is, it can make it even worse. So this is an obvious one. Make sure you know where it is and how to use it. And one last thing on this point is I would know how to winterize your outdoor taps, find out where the water line is and how you can turn it off. And then you want to turn it off and then turn on the outdoor taps to blow out the extra moisture, just so that your taps don't freeze in the wintertime. They can get down to -40 here, and you don't want to have your pipes bursting. So figure out how to winterize your outdoor taps. Point number five is the electrical panel. Now this one is fairly obvious. They're usually downstairs in a single family home in the mechanical room. Sometimes for condos, they can be in kind of weird spots, so I would know where it is. Sometimes they're behind paintings and it's not so obvious where they are, so I definitely know where it is. Usually a home inspector can find these during the inspection. Now, when you're moving in and you're plugging things in, maybe you trip the breaker. So I would make sure you know how to reset a trip breaker. It's usually pretty easy. And I'd probably also label the control panel or the electrical panel if it's not already, just because I'm kind of detail oriented and it can help maybe in an emergency if you know exactly which breaker does what. Moving on to point number six is the security system. So maybe you're actually buying a property and inheriting the seller's security system. If that's the case, you're going to want to deactivate the former system and put it in your name. And I would also change the code as well. So just things like this you might want to look into for your peace of mind. Point number seven is you want to check on your HVAC system, so heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Now, most properties in Calgary have a built-in humidifier attached to the furnace. You're going to want to adjust this depending on what season it is and to how you like it. I've been in properties that have been super humid, it was set too high, and others where it's not even on and it gets too dry. So you get like cracked skin, your wood will crack. So you're going to want to adjust the humidifier to how you like it. I would also look into getting your furnace serviced and cleaned. Now, sometimes you can get this done in the purchase contract, other times you can't. But if you're buying like a home from like the 80s or the 90s and has an older furnace, I would definitely look at getting it serviced and cleaned. It doesn't cost all that much money and it's definitely a peace of mind. And you might also want to change the filter as well. And you might also want to look into your hot water tank, make sure that it's working properly, and same thing with your air conditioning. So this is another reason why home inspections are so important, because they check on everything like this. Moving on to point number eight is professional cleaning. Now, I've come across many sellers who leave the property in fantastic shape. They're just nice people. They care about the property. But I've come across many other people who are not the same and leave the property in a bit of a mess. So if you are buying a property and you're wondering what are the next steps, this is probably the first thing that I would do if I'm moving into a property, is budget for a professional cleaning. I would say for the day after possession. just because the day of key release can be a bit random, and I've had it plenty of times where the key release actually happens at like 2 or 3 p.m. So it can be a bit tough to organize the cleaners on the same day as possession, but I would definitely do it on the day after possession if possible. And you can also have this as a term in the contract for professional cleaning. It won't always work though. Some sellers will just be like, no, we're not interested. And if it's a red hot market, this could actually cost you the transaction. If you have 2 identical offers and one has professional cleaning and one doesn't, well, that seller will typically go for the easier option. So it can be a bit costly in a red hot market, a bit easier in a balanced or a buyer's market. So the seller might be cooperative, but I plan to do this on your own if not. And moving along to point number 9, you're going to want to set up utilities in your name. Now, I've been guilty of this in the past, and I didn't tell a buyer, and they moved into the property, and a few days later, their power wasn't working, and they weren't sure what to do. Now, this might be totally obvious to some buyers, but for others, it could be their first time, and maybe they don't know they have to actually get all the utilities set up in their name. So this could be, water, recycling, the garbage, stormwater, sewer, natural gas, electricity. All of these things have to be set up. Now, I use NMAX because they do all in one, and it's very easy. So that's who I'd recommend. They just do everything all at once. But this has to be done, otherwise you won't have utilities in your new property. And I'd probably set this up a few weeks before you actually move into the property, just so that there's enough time to get everything turned on before you move into it. And I'd also notify your TV and internet providers that you are making a move and that you want to get your new place set up, because they might be backed up for a few weeks. So if you are waiting until you move in to notify them, it could be a bit of a hassle if you don't have internet for a few weeks in your new property. And the next point, you're going to want to update your mailing address with everyone. So for your bills, credit cards, car insurance, even the government with taxes. So update your address with everybody. You're also going to want to get a new ID with your new mailing address. I've been pulled over in the past. I think I was speeding and my address had changed, and the cop gave me so much trouble for that. So it's not worth it. So that's an easy fix as well. And you can also set up mail forwarding with Canada Post. And one last thing on this point is that when you're buying a new property, sometimes the seller forgets to leave the mail key with you for those community boxes. And I've had it where they actually move out of province and they vanish and there's no mail key. If this is the case, you can call Canada Post and they will issue you a new key and mailbox free of charge. And the final point here, when you're buying a property, it's very common to do a home inspection. And on those home inspection reports, there's a ton of items that have to be addressed. Now, for major items, they can usually be negotiated with the seller when you're going through the process. But there's still a bunch of items that need to be addressed in the future. And I would look at that as like a to-do list after you've taken ownership of the property for the most part. So I'd have that inspection report handy, and I would tick off those items as you get settled into the property and have time to tackle those issues. Well, there you go. That's my list of the things that you should be doing once you've taken ownership of the property. Now, if you are out there watching this and you could use some help buying, selling, or relocating, feel free to give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email. And I've also got some free resources for you in the pinned comment, buyer's guide, seller's guide, and a relocation guide, all free for download. And I will see you on the next video.